Welcome to CNET Live, and just when you thought we were done with Apple events for the year, it's time for one more thing. That's right, we had the iPhone event last month, we had WWDC in June, and today it's all about Apple Silicon. This is the launch of a new series of processors for Apple and a whole new world for the Mac range. So we've got our event happening now. We're all building up to the live event that Apple is hosting at 10 a.m. But in the meantime, we're going to give you the lowdown on everything we expect from today. But before we start, I'm going to introduce my fabulous co-leads for today. Joining us from New Jersey, Scott Stein. Welcome, Scott.
Hello, long distance once again.
Good to have you here. And the fabulous, as ever, Patrick Holland. Welcome.
Great to see everybody. How's everyone doing?
I'm doing fab, bright and early, ready for some new chips. I'm just going to be only making potato jokes today, so I hope you guys are ready. Gird your loins for that. So as I mentioned up top, today is Mac Day and the dawn of the Apple Silicon era. So it's a departure from Intel, who have been making the chips for Apple that go inside their Macs, but Apple bringing everything in-house. We could see things like faster, more powerful Macs, maybe better battery life, maybe new hardware. We're going to see a new webcam, fingers crossed. To talk us through all of that, let's start off. We heard about these chips getting released. We heard about the new Apple Silicon era when it was announced at WWDC in June. Scott, can you give me the kind of the bird's eye view of all of this? Tell me, what information have you been able to fish on these chips, so to speak?
We're going to make a lot of chip jokes as I snack on chips. So here's the story. Apple said they're finally going to be moving over to their own chips for Macs. And that's the last product line that they have that's not using their own chips. The iPhone moved over, the iPads had it, the watches, everything else are Apple processors. And so now the Mac. And this hasn't happened for a long time since Apple moved to Intel chips years ago. And what it means is hopefully a more refined, graphics boosted Mac that Apple can improve and finesse over time with more control. And that the control thing is interesting because I think on one side you may see greater increases over time like you do with iPhones and iPads, but then control in terms of how does Apple keep that ecosystem open? There's a lot of concerns there. We may not see apps that are going to be available for that platform right off the bat. Apple will probably be leaning very hard on iOS apps running within that, which they talked about. And that may be a bridge until there are more apps. So it could be a little bit weird. Or we may just get to a point where what we think of as the iOS App Store is the Mac App Store, which is what they tried kind of a couple of years ago with the Mac App Store. So that in a nutshell is what I expect. But I don't know what it turns into for stuff that you'd really want to purchase in a laptop. The chip thing is behind the scenes. Is it better battery life? Is it better graphics? Better camera, Face ID? Like, what are you going to give us?
Yeah. And I'm going to talk about, I guess, for everyone watching at home, whether you upgrade, the whole, what it means for you when you're going out and buying a Mac. So I want to come to that. But Patrick, we've been working with Intel for a while. As though I work at Apple, I just make all of their laptops.
You really do. You're like a ghostwriter for computers.
Yeah, I'm very tired and very busy. But good mates with Craig Federighi. We've seen Intel chips in Macs for some years now. What does it mean for Apple to bring the design of their chips, their hardware, their software, to bring everything in-house?
Well, I think it means controlling. I think going back to Scott's point a little bit, I think who it's for, it's really for Apple. Because if we think back to 2006, we think about when they switched to Intel, they had the Pentium guy come up in his cool safety suit thing with the wafer, right? We go back to that, and that was all about giving Apple more options and giving them more power, because that was kind of criticism then. But this is all about control, and this gives Apple control of when they get to release their computers, when they get to put chips in their computers, and hopefully, going to Scott's stuff, it does give us cool things too, right? It gives us maybe some interoperability between operating systems, or it could one day lead to one. I don't think that's going to happen, but there's a lot of potential with this. But I think for the most part, it's all about Apple getting control of their chips and getting them all put in place.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting here is it's a different kind of architecture. Now, Apple hasn't been using the word ARM, but it's an ARM-based chip. So, Scott, tell me, we've seen ARM-based PCs before. Qualcomm is obviously the big player there, but Apple is actually licensing the instruction set. So there's a chance that they might be able to customize things a little bit more on the processor level.
Yeah, well, I think like look at what Apple's done with the iPhone and iPad, and I really look at the iPad Pro. What has happened is that yes, it's ARM based, and we've seen ARM laptops. A lot of them haven't been very powerful, but Apple has pushed a lot of graphics into their chips. The X and the Z line of chips on the iPad Pro have had more cores and have allowed bigger graphics backend boost. That's the sort of stuff you'd need on a laptop. Now, like on benchmarks, I've been using iPad Pros for years, and they benchmark really close to what MacBooks do, and I think they've shown that they've seemed as just as fast. Now, we don't know how that's going to work for the type of multitasking you would expect on a Mac. I mean, iPads can multitask, but in a very limited capacity, and we don't know if that's by design or by necessity with that. So I think Apple will sort of show all of that. And I think, again, like I would expect more graphics cores for a MacBook Pro than on an iPad Pro. But it kind of gets to that point where like I'm holding an iPad Pro right here. Like these things are really powerful. They're really cool. What happens with the iPad Pro in relationship to the Macs? Like you have these two different product lines. I agree, like Patrick, like I would expect a fusion at some point. They're not going to talk about that now. But I mean, you don't want to keep buying two different products. People won't buy two different products if they're super expensive. Where do those meet or diverge? And what's a Mac? What's an iPad? It gets weirder now that they're going to share probably a very similar chip.
You're right there. I think what people expect from an iPad, I mean, Scott, you and I, we are very different iPad users. I use mine as a Netflix box. It's this powerful machine, and I just sit there watching TV on it. So I'm clearly what our ancestors imagined the future would be. But when we have an iPad, I imagine it as kind of, single. You know, they've obviously brought in multitasking, but when I think of my laptop, it is 400 Chrome tabs open. It's, chat going on over here. If I am not at work, maybe I'm streaming video while I'm online. Like there's a lot happening. So it's a question of whether when you move to the ARM-based chip, whether you can still have that real grunt behind your laptop, which is what people expect from that kind of use case. Patrick, do you think beyond what's happening kind of underneath the hood, what are your expectations for what this chip could mean in terms of new physical hardware? I mean, will we see Face ID on the webcam? Will we see a totally new looking Mac, or do you think it's all going to be underneath the hood?
Yeah, I've been contemplating that a little bit. I think, by the way, I think even without switching to another chip, people want to see like a better webcam, or if people want to see Face ID, right? But also, as we've seen from these kind of, I wouldn't call them hybrids, but like the computer I have now that I'm talking to you on, it's got a touch bar, right? That touch bar is powered by a separate chip. Was it? I don't know what, I'm gonna not. You can like yell at me in the comments. I forget the name of it. T something chip. But then the Mac Pro, the big old Mac Pro that we like edit videos on and all, and people use for very heavy like tasks. There's a chip for that that's specifically for rendering video. So I'm wondering, there might be stuff where, hey, this is a laptop, but it's got this special chip for people who are graphic designers and movie makers and stuff like that. But here's the same design a laptop without the chip, and it's there. So you might be able to have actually more specialized, more specialized line of laptops and stuff. But the other exciting thing is if you're a developer, and I think that's where a lot of the focus has been a little bit with this change, is like, can I bring stuff that if I have this really cool app on the iPad or even just the iPhone, can I bring that over and make a Mac version? And I think that's kind of where I think things get interesting, right? You combine that with stuff like, can we put cellular on this? Can we put 5G? Do we want 5G in a laptop? I'm not sure if that's a great idea yet either. But I think those are all questions of where it can go. And I think, maybe today we will get to see a little hint of that, like a little sprinkle of pepper or salt on the delivery of whatever they're going to announce. But I don't know if we're going to see those things right away. I wouldn't count on seeing like 5G right away or seeing that Face ID right away.
So we might
Or
see
like,
lightly seasoned chips, is what you're saying.
Like
And potentially
the
chips
chip
in
that
different
just has like
flavors.
one or yeah, exactly. The chip that has like 1 or 2 granules of salt on it. That's the one we're going to see today. But you know, at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if they did bring, if they, hey, here's people who've been working safely distanced. This guy has his website. And this guy is, or this woman is, you know, the chief of her company, and she makes these things. And they've actually been working on these Macs, so you can actually see real people using them. Because Apple's, I think, really big about showing you. They got to show that this thing is powerful. They really want to show how you can use it. And if I see like, whoa, that DJ made this whole thing at the Apple campus on the new computer, I got to get that. You know, that might be kind of some things we see today. I don't know.
Yeah, I think what was most exciting to me about that was we couldn't see you there, Scott. Patrick was full screen, but Scott did not break eye contact with me on the webcam and just slowly started eating a potato chip. That's what I love to see on the live stream. There we go.
It's it's the behind the scenes, literally behind the scenes.
It's
stuff,
behind the scenes that keeps us going. I think you're right there, Patrick. You mentioned some interesting things, that you've got these different elements that are going on inside your laptop. Do we see a new webcam? Obviously, that's huge. Everyone, I think, has realized, you know, no one thinks of the webcam as something you go and take photos with the Eiffel Tower with. But as we've all sat at home, we've all realized how mediocre we can look on a Zoom call when we're, you know, calling in with our colleagues. So I think that's probably one of those pain points that is really big this year. Something I wanted to raise just as a sidebar while we talk about hardware changes is the capability of touchscreens. So we've seen on a lot of the Windows laptops, on ARM-based laptops, we've seen touch capabilities, and it's not something that you get from a Mac. Obviously, you've got that experience on the iPad. How much of a game changer do you guys think it would be? I guess starting with you, Scott, how much of a game changer would it be to be able to touch the screen of your Mac? Or is it just an iPad?
well, I think it could be both, right? So I think the game changer would be like every other computer has that. So, you know, that's been out there and has been pretty expected. I think kids are surprised when a computer doesn't have a touch screen. So that would help. I don't know if I'd be touching the Mac screen all the time, but it would certainly allow Apple to open up all sorts of doorways for future product designs. I mean, you had the hybrid explosion with Windows laptops years ago, and Chromebooks did the same. There's no reason, I still say, there's no reason why you couldn't have an iPad Mac kind of a hybrid. And why would you do that? Well, I mean, for drawing, for one, because the pencil's great, and that whole world of art and creative tool stuff is currently limited to like the sidecar feature where you can pair it with a Mac, but it's useful, but I mean, you could have something that does both. And I think that the touch bar to me always felt like an attempt by Apple to split the difference and create like a little bit of a bridge to the touch world, but you could have more of that. I think certainly having their own chip, it just enables them to think of different solutions in the future, and just be a lot more flexible for that. So I think it's a big deal.
Yeah, Patrick, you mentioned you have the touch bar on your laptop there with you. Is it something that you would want to go full touch? I don't know why I'm sticking my hands up like that. But is it something you really want, or is the touch bar enough for you? Or is the touch bar, was that just kind of a little bit of a frippery that you didn't really need?
You're going striking right at the core, Claire, just right at the controversy.
Frippery.
I think the touch bar, it's interesting. I would say I don't use it that much. And every now and then I'm like, oh, that button's there, I could just do that. But maybe there are other things besides the touch bar, or that are touch bar adjacent, that might be able to use for this, because we have had the same laptop for the most part form factor forever, right? I mean, it's this thing that folds up. That's not going to change, but I do think the way we interact with it can, whether it's using a touch bar, or probably more likely it's interaction with the screen. We've even seen like PCs where they have a screen that is the keyboard kind of thing, or half the keyboards. So I'm not sure we're going to see anything radical like that today, but I would think down the line that, yeah, I mean, honest to God, like, I know my laptop does not have a touchscreen. I can't tell you how many times I'm like, I'm not on the iPad. You know, it's just like it's instinctual. And you got to imagine that the people at Apple are human beings too. They have families too. They see how their children are interacting with stuff, and they've had those moments too. And it's just a matter of like, how do you sell that? Now, people are going to like the Apple passionate are going to be like, well, Steve Jobs says it would never come to a Mac. It's like, yeah, it wouldn't come to Mac 10 years ago or even 5 years ago, but maybe now's the time. And maybe these chips are a way to also bring some of those things over to a Mac that Apple, would have to do very strategically so they don't get a lot of pushback. Like, well, you said you'd never do it. It's like, yeah, but we want to make money, right? So we're going to do it. And I think that's kind of where this transition gets interesting, because not only get new chips, you have it's like someone moving to a new city. Like, it's like, I have a whole new life, right? It's like everything seems new, but is it going to be new? There's a lot of possibility, but we'll see actually what Apple brings over. And maybe it is features that we can't even imagine. And also stylus stuff. We see Apple Pencil support on the iPad. Why not have that? I mean, you can push it on a trackpad, but that's not really the same, I mean, would it be great to have your laptop and just, I don't know. I have no idea. That's why I don't design laptops.
Remember when they said that your best stylus was your finger? And so this happened, even though it didn't seem like Apple was going to make a stylus. So I expect those changes will come when Apple feels like the moment's right. And I agree. Like, it sets a stage for a lot of transformation. One thing we didn't get into because it's totally speculative, but let's just speculate. I look at AR and VR, right? So I look at this stuff. I know Apple is very into AR. There's an underpinning going on that would help here, in that you could have standalone VR headsets, sure, but a lot of them rely on something else to do the processing. So you could have a future AR, VR glasses or whatever connect to a phone, connect to an iPad. But what about a Mac? For VR, Macs have been underpowered. And Apple tried to experiment with VR support, and that kind of shriveled up. There was a whole thing a couple of years ago with Steam and Vive, but if Apple is making its own powerful graphics on Macs, that definitely points to me to a possibility down the road that they're going to have a headset that works with both, and for creators, and like, why for creators? Because they use those for high-end creative applications, whether it's 3D modeling or testing, whatever it is. And so I think that is an interesting dot there, but I don't think it's just that. I think it's any accessories or peripherals. It could be things beyond the Apple Watch. Anything in the connected ecosystem would just allow them to work across all the devices and not have that weird divide that is happening right now. And I think that this is part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think something that comes to mind when you talk about ecosystems and different use cases is, for years, I used to go to the Computex show in Taipei, which was all about PC peripherals. And every year we saw just fantastic, weird new devices. And I saw some proof of concept stuff from Intel. I saw things where you've got, screen on one side, e-reader on another side, or writable kind of e-ink. There's all these different form factors. A lot of them are flash in the pan. A lot of them are maybe not something that is going to become your best friend. As you say, Patrick, the form factor of the laptop is pretty likely to hang around. But I think there's opportunity here to think about, a Mac convertible, or think about, multi-screen devices, or making more use of the stylus, as you say, Scott. So there's all these options there that they really could start exploring. And we're looking, oh, look at this. I mean, yeah, you're right, Scott, you're right. It's essentially an iPad with a folio case. Just to do a bit of a time check, we're about 12 minutes away from the event starting at 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern. I want to talk about, while you flash that iPad of yours around, Scott, you mentioned you're obviously a big iPad user. You've played with them all, and Apple has been using its own silicon in iPads and iPhones for a number of years now. So I think of an iPhone and an iPad kind of being here, but the laptop and the iMac, that's your real grunt machine. Are we going to get into a middle zone of sort of nothingness, or do you think that this is just a logical extension of what they're already doing?
I think it's a logical extension. I mean, there's some pretty high-powered apps on the iPad Pro, and you have to pay up for a trackpad keyboard case or get that whole setup going, that you realize, oh wow, this is, I use it pretty much like a laptop, but pretty much, because you have these moments where the road ends and you just realize I can't really get to that spot I wanted to get to with an app or software or whatever. Multitasking. And I just think just it's just about continuing that road a bit more. It seems very clearly laid out. So, and you go to like things like webcams, like the webcam and the Face ID stuff on iPad Pros is fantastic compared to a MacBook, but it's off on the side. So you've got this weird off angle thing. Well, meanwhile, the laptops are perfectly centered, but the cameras aren't as good. So like that just needs to be, you know, fixed, make the best of both worlds, get the thing that can help us while we're still largely remote. And I think people will still be remote for a while, even beyond pandemics, because it's the way a lot of remote work is happening and jobs are, you know, flowing. But the point is, yeah, I think there's a lot of work that can be done to evolve the form.
Patrick, I mean, you are, you know, you are a short filmmaker. You would consider yourself a creative as well as a tech reviewer. Tell me, what kind of demos would you like to see out of the event today? Is it, I mean, you mentioned an offhand comment about a DJ set before. I don't know if you've got a pro DJ light that I don't know about, but are you expecting to see some film editing, some work that's really showing off the grunt of these machines?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, I used to be DJ Tanner, Full House. But seriously, I think for creative stuff, that's kind of also the marketing angle, right? With a lot of the stuff, we're not going to see, like, we brought in a bunch of accountants to do some very, very big macros on these new Macs. That would be awesome. I would actually think that would be so cool to cover.
And that's probably what a lot of people want a Mac for. They're probably like, but can it run like 17 spreadsheets at once? That's all I want to be able to do.
How many Chrome tabs can I have open? This is like one of us clicking it, you know? No, but it's obviously going to be you're going to have people doing it. They're hopefully going to be making real things that, like, hey, we launched this website off this, or this commercial that for the computer was edited on this computer, to show off that power. Again, having those applications that translate it from kind of like a futuristic idea to a numbers idea, that this is this fast, to this is what you can do. This is what you can do model is very Apple, right? And you know what I hope for. I love the filmmaker stuff. I'm such a sucker when they like, hey, we gave this phone to this filmmaker and he shot this video, and even if it's like a travel video, it's still amazing, right? So I would love to see, like, I'd love to see them get like Steven Soderbergh. He's like, yeah, I'm editing a new TV show. It airs tonight. You know, that would be phenomenal. That might won't happen, but
I mean, we can
a good
only
Logic
hope.
Demo.
Yeah.
But
or just
like all the.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, the creative stuff. I agree with Patrick. It's totally like that's their wheelhouse for this.
Well, and the other thing too, as I say, is the app. So if you see it like, oh, it's running Adobe, well, maybe not Premiere, because that is a bit of a competitive product for the Final Cut. But if you see them, maybe Davinci Raw or something, Davinci Raw, a program that's for like coloring video, maybe you'll see something like that where it is a thing that a lot of people use. That, hey, it does work and it's not buggy, is kind of the other underlying thing they don't say, but that's kind of what we want to hear.
So as we get closer to the event now, we're expecting, Vanessa, our colleague, did a fabulous video on everything we can expect today. And with her witchy Apple networks that she's tapped into, she was talking about that it's likely we're expecting a 13-inch Air, 13-inch MacBook Pro, 16-inch Pro. These are some of the rumors that have been going around. Also rumored for a 12-inch MacBook, a 24-inch iMac, and a potential Mac Mini. So, I mean, obviously, none of us really knows what we're going to see today, but I'm interested to talk about the purchasing question, the retail question. Now, Apple says it's going to take roughly 2 years to transition from Intel-based Macs to its new Apple Silicon, during which time it's going to still sell Intel Macs and it will still support those Intel Macs for a number of years. You know, they are the company that continues to support older products. Scott, the big question on everyone's mind is whether to upgrade. We'll obviously know more after the keynote, but do you think it's upgrade to silicon or wait until maybe later generations of silicon?
I would always say wait if you have a first generation product, unless you want to be first on the block to play around with a new chip that may have weird compatibility. You know, that's something that, again, not just for what apps work with it, but what is the final form that it takes. That all of this happens. The iPad Pro is in a weird spot. Again, I say that because people think about those. That launched in the spring. We may see a new iPad Pro next spring. And so it's weird staggering, because again, that's something that's competing for work people, and then this will too. So I also am curious how affordable it's going to be. Are these going to come with price drops, or is it going to be something that shoots up, or is it just flat? So I think those all obviously factor in too. If other stuff goes on sale, you can get like an Intel Mac at a discount. That's perfectly fine. That'll last you a bunch more years.
Yeah, I mean, the price point is obviously a really big question, because when you bring your own design of a chip in-house, that can potentially reduce the cost, but obviously there's a lot of R&D that needs to go into a new generation, so maybe that cost gets passed on to a consumer. So it's really hard to know. Scott, you mentioned waiting for the next generation. No one likes to be the one that has to have all the kinks worked out while they're using a product. But Patrick, say your Mac just died, and you're sort of thinking, okay, I need a new one by the end of the year. I need a new one by Christmas because I'm working from home and I can't get away without it. The wait question is good for people, maybe like me, who I've got a work Mac, and I've also got my old Air that's really hanging on pretty well. It's not that great for, cutting video or things like that, but I can use it as a Netflix box when my other Netflix box is broken. Patrick, for you, let's say it's just died. Would you get Apple Silicon, or would you go out and buy an Intel-based Mac, seeing as they're still going to be around? And we may even see some new Intel-based Macs launched today.
Okay, yeah, that's not a tough question. It's a very personal question. So I think for me, Patrick Holland, I probably would not buy a Silicon Mac. I would be fine with an Intel Mac, because they're going to be supporting those for years to come. In 2 years, it's not like the Intel computers will just all stop working. Also, just to jump back, I believe the event is starting. Am I wrong about that? Or no, I'm seeing Tim Cook. It just got me excited. So sorry about that. Tim Cook.
No, that's from WWDC. I do like that you're switched on and you have this Apple reporter ping inside your brain every time.
But anyway, my Tim Cook alert went off. But what I was going to say was, I think for me, it would just be sticking with an Intel Mac. And I think I know all my stuff works on it. I think there's two things I want to say though. I think the Pros thing is interesting. I think it's really smart that if there is rumored that there's a Pro laptop, or even an iMac that's like a Pro lap or desktop or whatever, even smaller, I think that's great, because that's going to be the thing, right? Is this thing powerful enough for Pros? Because that would be the thing we'd all be asking them if it was just a MacBook Air, right? It's be like, oh, well, that's okay, but can it really be a processor for like a Mac Pro? The other thing I would say is price point. If it does, not only, maybe it won't lower prices, it might go the other way where it gets really big and really low. Then that's all of a sudden that question changes that you asked me. It's like, well, if I can get a computer for $800, it's like an iPad and a Mac hybrid, then yeah, I'd probably go that route. But I don't think that exists yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think the ideal thing that we all want is, I want a phone that's actually both Apple and Android, that combines the best of both worlds, and no one is releasing that product for me, which is very disappointing. All right, so it looks like we're inside of a minute to the Apple event launching based on my starter timer. So I'm just going to keep an eye on multiple screens at once. Here's how everything's going to work today. We're going to take you play by play through the keynote. Now, Apple doesn't let anybody stream its keynote, so we can't steal that footage and bootleg it and bring it to you. But what we want you to do is have your Apple stream open in one screen, and you can keep us going to give you all that sweet commentary, because we really know our stuff. Well, these two do. I mean, I know a bit of
good stuff.
I know. I like to say I know a bit of stuff. Okay, it looks like we're just a couple of seconds away, so I'm going to keep an eye out, and we can.
You know what I think?
Live in.
I think.
Okay, I'm getting some noise. I've got ambient noise. It's just it's an Apple logo with lots of rainbows around it. Okay, thoughts on the rainbow, boys? Talk me through your thoughts on the rainbow.
It's that wheel. But that's not like great memory to bring up, like the spinning wheel.
Also goes,
it's like the
or the 6 colors of the Mac logo, right? That's the rainbow.
And the 6 colors, yeah. The wheel is the bad association with it, but the positive.
The wheel's the bad. Yeah, it's like a Jekyll and Hyde of the Apple world.
I will make an advanced prediction. I bet the iPad Mac hybrid comes at exactly the same time as a AR VR future headset that they'll ask you to buy. So it's like the products will cannibalize themselves right as a new product emerges.
I mean, that's standard, right? Like just as you think the one product to rule them all is going to come and solve all of your problems, you suddenly realize that you have to buy 5 more things.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were talking my in-laws through having to get a new TV. Well, they were actually talking about getting a new speaker system. And then they're like, maybe we want a new sound bar. I was like, you know what? Get a new TV because that's probably your issue. Then we're going to get you a sound bar as well. Then we're going to get you some smart speakers that are going to all connect. And then suddenly, you know, my mother-in-law is in for another 40 products that she was like, I just wanted a nice speaker to play some music. I was like, sorry, I wish I could do something else for you.
Well, and Claire, going to the point of the TV here a little bit and going back to your iPad box, that's kind of what I think the iPad is. It's like, you could build it up to be a computer, or you can have it be an iPad box. They could do both, right? I can't build down my laptop to make it into an iPad box. It's an iPad box that always has a bottom, right? So I think that also, you know, I think there's some logic behind the iPad going from just being a tablet up to being a laptop, even though it is a laptop if you really think about it.
And there's a lot of people that buy a new Mac that are just buying a way too overpowered machine. If you're sitting there writing documents on Word, doing a couple of spreadsheets every so often, and maybe a Zoom call once in a while, you don't need anything. You don't need the guts of an i9 chip or, you know, some really advanced system, because that's not what is designed for you. All right. Looks like the video's changing a bit.
It's happening.
Scott, you pulled down a prop there. I'm very intrigued. What are we seeing here?
This is a sandworm from this is my sandworm action figure from the 80s. I know it's disturbing, but it'll keep me company.
I thought it was something related to Apple. No.
No, just gonna keep it by my side in case you're wondering what it was on the shelf.
Yes,
it's the original sandworm. Okay, it's starting.
Yeah, we're seeing some beautiful rainbow shots of Apple headquarters here, which I finally visited this year, having moved to the United States. What a glorious time. Having only ever seen it on TV. It really is a place that has to be seen to be believed. It's everything you've seen on the TV show Silicon Valley, it's like, it's based in fact. It's glorious. It's like a giant Apple store.
Yeah.
I do love that these intros are, and here's Tim. Alrighty.
I'm seeing if I can find it here. There we go.
I've got it. It's talking about the pace of new product releases. We've had 3 product events now. The watch and the iPad and the iPhone. Now this.
Yeah, I'm surprised. We've sort of talked a bit about whether this is the new cadence, the new normal, because we've just seen so many releases and so many events. It used to be one big event for kind of, well, not necessarily, but you'd see the iPhone event in September. It was all hinged around that. Reporters would run down and just get everything done in like 2 hours. But now we're having these sort of more staggered events. So obviously we're seeing images here of the Apple Watch. We saw iPad and the iPhone Fitness, Apple One. We're seeing all these different
iPhones.
I remember all of these. I remember us having to cover all of these and how tired we were.
This was our fall.
Yeah.
Going back to what you're saying, Claire, I think that we're going to see more of this, because these events can be any size, right? And we're all going to tune into it, whether it's a smaller product or something like as big as the iPhone. They kind of get all that same attention, but they don't have to have everyone fly out to Cupertino to cover it, like every 2 weeks.
Yeah,
that would be a lot of money.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, we're definitely seeing a new world order from this year, and I think that's that shift is probably, some of it's going to stick around. You know, there's probably going to be a case that we won't necessarily see all the reporters going out for the big flagship events anymore. Maybe it's done remotely because they get to control the narrative a lot more. I mean, obviously, we wouldn't have seen these kinds of beautiful shots showcasing Apple Park if we weren't able to pre-record, if Tim Cook wasn't able to pre-record. So now he's talking, we've pivoted onto Mac. More customers than ever are choosing Mac. And he says that the business grew by nearly 30% last quarter as everyone came into their homes and realized that their horrible old laptops weren't as good as their work computers, and they suddenly had to upgrade.
And quick fun fact, where he is actually kind of like, for lack of a better term, is basically a cafeteria. That's their cafeteria.
Yeah.
Like, think of our cafeteria at CNET, Claire.
Yeah, I can.
You don't have one.
we have a drinks machine. And a popcorn machine.
And we got that coffee machine right before the lockdown.
Oh gosh, yeah, I forgot about
Tom
that.
Hanks. We see Tom Hanks.
Oh, Tom Hanks. Yeah, okay. So this is the use case of all the cool people that use Mac. Is that? Yeah. Okay. Well, Billie Eilish.
By the way, you might see my picture pop up there. Don't be too starstruck, guys.
Sorry.
Okay?
Yeah. Okay. Jonathan from Queer Eye, Lady Gaga, and Patrick Holland. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he is on Lady Gaga levels.
Difference makers. It's like my only link to the outside world now is some form of computer.
Yeah. I mean, how much of these events is gloss and how much is guts, would you say? There's a lot of this stuff at the start that Lisa Simpson using her not quite Mac. Yeah, I sometimes wonder. I suppose this is the cool factor that then by the time they drop the price, Iris Apfel, what a fab lady. I didn't know she used a Mac.
Here we go. Oh yeah,
I guess maybe so. Oh, he's moved. Gosh,
and there was no account. I didn't see
he's saying the silicon
showing that video.
Mac day is here. We might be all staggered at different times. Are you guys descending into the lab, the multicolored levels of the lab?
Okay,
I'm on the top of the cafeteria still.
Yeah.
Well, I'm down in the basement.
Oh, just wait for me. I'll come down to the
party,
basement with you, Scott. I'll be down there.
So we're in the watch party. We're all in different parts of the show.
I know. I've been moved to a different. Here we go. The whole Mac lineup.
So we saw actually, when you speak of that lab, we saw that in Dub. We saw them go down to a secret, undisclosed location where they were working on their chips and processors. Gave it a very James Bond vibe. Now, it's not actually likely that these folks will be the ones building the chips. I mean, we've had in the past, they've used Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Corp, or TSMC, get my acronym right there, to actually produce these chips so that they'll be the ones designing and kind of customizing what's going into the next generation.
So I think they're going to name the chips right now. Well, they're saying they're excited to announce what these chips are going to be. The first step in the transition. The first chip for the Mac. What's it called?
Salt and vinegar.
It's called the M1.
The M1. Okay.
That makes sense. Mac.
All right. So Scott is significantly further ahead of.
Small size and power efficiency are the first things they mention.
Which
so
is
you can imagine battery life.
Yeah.
Well, and I was curious because the thing with this year's A14 was that it was 5 nanometers. So it's going to be curious to see what this M1 chip, how big it will be.
Yeah. Well, that settles that as far as like, well, how different will this be? I imagine it will be pretty different compared to the others. But again, power efficiency. Power efficiency is being mentioned a lot.
Which is what we're used to with the ARM laptops. It was a sort of a switch on and stay on. They called them always on laptops. The idea that you didn't have to kind of shut it down, turn it off at night. It was just something that was just a quick wake device that was just ready to go when you are. So obviously
they're talking about compressing all the different things on the Mac down to one system on a chip, bringing that all down into one component, which also could suggest a smaller size, not just power efficiency. So I mean, a new memory architecture, high bandwidth, low latency. They're going through the whole deep dive now of everything, which is always like more than you can initially take in.
We're going to definitely be pulling out some of these images where it shows that kind of that M1 architecture, and I guess all of the guts of the SoC or the system on a chip. So,
and 5 nanometer like the others. Yeah.
Okay, very good.
So
I'll keep telling you what I see.
Thank you. Please do.
It's like play by play. It's love it.
16 billion transistors, the most put on a single chip by Apple, they said.
I mean, it's
those
remarkable.
Are those big, crazy chip numbers that you get thrown out during these that, are impossible to digest.
I mean, that's
8-core CPU.
8 core.
So 8-core CPU.
Octo-core, as promised. That was all I wanted to be able to say today. Octo-core.
But they're the high performance, and then it looks like the others.
Okay, so that's what we're seeing up on the screen there. Thank you to our wonderful man behind the scenes, Stephen Beecham, who's pulled up an image there of the actual M1 itself. And so this is what they talk about when they say system on a chip. This is
well, that's the stuff they're compressing. So they were saying that that's the previous Mac, and then it all gets pushed
okay, my
down.
mistake.
Chip,
yes.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So four high-speed cores.
Yep, that's
yeah.
I was going to say, I was like, that seems big, and
it looks
big
like
and not
no,
what
it's
they showed us
you'll
earlier.
see the after one, the 4 high-efficiency cores, and then so it's a lot like what's been going on, like on the iPad Pro, and and a lot of the chip structure on iPhones, where they can kind of dual wield. That's a weird role playing.
Okay, so here we've got the image. Now we're sort of breaking it out, saying the 4 high efficiency cores, and so that's what we're talking about. So on the left side there, we've got the octo core, and
then they broke it out to show you the cores inside the CPU.
Well, and
the
it's going to be interesting too, like if they have like they optimize like some of the cores to do more like low energy stuff, like if they're doing stuff like that. If they do that on the phone, right, where it's like common stuff is supplemented to something different than like really high demand stuff.
So apparently at 10 watts, it's 2x the CPU performance of a laptop chip from before, or equivalent. I don't know what their latest PC laptop chip co-example is, but they're looking at something that arced higher at lower wattage. So performance
that's
per watt.
Basically that's the sweet spot that you're looking for. So they're saying, just in terms of the graphs that they're using there, it's significantly higher than what they're calling the latest PC laptop chip. So I guess when we talk about higher power, and this is something they talked about at WWDC, that when you start to get into really high powered iMacs, those are really power consuming machines, which you don't want in a laptop because you want all day battery life. You want to be able to use it in a single day. So what they're promising here is that you're going to get the kind of high power, but with high performance, but with low power consumption, which is, I guess, the sweet spot of, can you have it fast, good, and cheap? You promise that you never get all three, but
they're going into the graphics now as well. 8-core GPU. And again, 25,000 threads at a time. So they're really talking about the graphics boost here versus what you would have gotten certainly on any sort of like MacBook before, calling the GPU in a class of its own. So again, they're doing a comparison. They have a graph. The M1, they're going to provide a multiplier here, 2 times more graphics performance than the PC chip at the 10 watt. So again, they're thinking 2x CPU, 2x graphics at 10 watts, 1/3 the power of what overall. So I mean, again, what they're comparing to, I think, would be like your everyday MacBook. I'm not sure if it's like, which one they're comparing against.
Well, and then you wonder like why you would need. I was going to say, you wonder why you would need all this power and stuff. I think a really good example would be, it's not necessarily for now, but maybe if you're going to have your laptop 3, 4, 5, even 6 years, then that's where the power and that stuff, the longevity of those chips. And the other thing that we're going to probably hear a lot about is battery life, because that is probably like the thing. There was that sweet spot a few years ago where your laptops will last 15, 16 hours sometimes in the charge, and that doesn't happen anymore.
This also has a secure enclave, which is for included security. It also has a 16-core neural engine. So speaking of what you use this stuff for, whether it's machine learning or AI, operations that you might be doing on a computer, or it could be much more advanced art tools. Like the types of like neural filters or effects. Like the iPad has some pretty cool stuff. They could bring a lot of that stuff over to Macs and be able to tap into that as well. So
I mean, it's interesting that we're talking about potential. Well, we've obviously got the graphics card built in there. I'm just going to flick off an image so that I can share it and get Beach to pull it up on screen. But we're seeing a lot of the promises of what this kind of SoC can deliver, and it's things like they said 11 trillion operations per second. So it's a lot of operations, Gary. But I think the idea of performance without great power consumption, that's obviously the dream, but whether it's actually going to be crazy good performance that you might expect from some sort of really hefty desktop device, or whether it's like it's pretty good performance, but it's more than my 6-year-old MacBook Air, that's for sure. So let's just pull out some of the features that we're seeing. HDR video processor and always on processor. So those are some of the promises of the ARM architecture, or architecture, as I'm going to be calling it henceforth. I'm sorry, guys, but you signed on for this.
It's going to eat chips, is it? What else are we going to know about these chips?
Well, a low power design. So, and you mentioned the secure enclave there earlier, Scott. High performance CPUs. Oh, and here we've got
Craig talking about some cool stuff, like the Mac instantly wakes up from sleep, just like the iPhone and iPad. He's leaning over and enjoying the glow of an instant on. So apparently, like, that's a thing now. Faster app launching.
Those are the features that we've sort of seen, and that was the promise we saw on some of those ARM-based Windows PCs, Windows laptops rather. So, that glowing screen is very Pulp Fiction.
I saw it said Barry White on the subcaption, so I'm gonna have to go back and rewatch this part.
You're gonna have to watch all of the Craig Federighi again, like the man, the hair, the legend.
So it sounds like it's more metal optimized, which is their way to tap into a lot of graphics power that's been on iPhone and iPad. And he's getting into some other stuff. Video decode. I mean, it's stuff we'd expect, which is, again, like, they're probably going to boost. They're going to boast a lot of improvements on. I would expect a lot of claims about video decoding and for video work, and that these should see a big boost. He just put one number up that I completely missed, but
well, he was talking about, he was showing a demonstration. There we go. My words are starting to fail me after more than an hour of speaking. A demonstration of rendering 3D animations, and that's when you start to see that kind of performance. So earlier, Patrick
Davinci Resolve. They're showing the program it's like that.
Quiet performance with better battery life, because, again, like, iPads don't make noise, which is nice. But I don't know how it'll be on a MacBook with one of these M1s.
We've all had the experience of our MacBook trying to take off from our desk as it slowly heats up, which is, the fan trying to cool down the system and say, limiting power to the processor because we don't want to overheat the system. So, all right.
And they flashed up 6K encoding, which is great for video work too. The Panasonic we use for filming some of these can shoot 6K, but our computers really can't handle 6K really well. So things like that, where
6K encoding, we've seen 3D animation rendering, we've seen Davinci, we've seen color grading for film.
And something that's been interesting is Apple's been working with camera manufacturers for a few years. They have a thing called Prores Raw, which is their video format, and that tied into something like this could make a really fast workflow for really big files that are saved efficiently but don't lose the quality. So that's the other aspect a lot of these chips can help too. I'm kind of curious to see.
Logic Pro can run 3 times more instruments and plugins, they said.
Okay.
So 6 times faster for, is that for Final Cut Pro? But I think just like for video editing, they're just saying that there's like more you can do at the same time, running faster, that all of their apps have been optimized.
A friend of mine who's a composer, when they announced this earlier, they had given that number. He's like, I don't need more instruments. I don't need that many instruments in Logic Pro. That's too many.
Well, yeah, they
don't have that many.
They were saying there. He was saying that apps like Pages and GarageBand and iMovie are really showing the power of the M1 chip. It's like, okay, well, GarageBand is great, but it's not like I'm editing an entire symphony of music there. So what
Adobe's bringing Lightroom and Photoshop. Photoshop's early next year. Lightroom's coming next month for universal apps that will run across devices.
Okay, so that's we were sort of saying whether we were going to see, I'm just adjusting. There we go. We were saying whether we were going to see Adobe apps. Obviously, they're the big use cases. They're competitors with some of Apple's apps, but they're the apps that people use. So we're seeing a Photoshop demonstration there. And obviously, Craig's talking about the integration between Big Sur software, which is the next gen of Mac OS, and how that's going to work and kind of leverage off the M1 chip, and how that's really going to utilize all that system architecture to bring you what you see when you're kind of using your Mac, how that's going to be a better experience. And we saw a mention there of Rosetta, which is the I guess the capability that will allow. Was that a props for the Rosetta Stone?
Yeah, because the OG Rosetta works so well, and that was one of the things that people worried about when they went from PowerPC to Intel, and the fact that they're bringing it back. I'm very excited to see what this means for. You were asking about what computer do you get. This is exciting. That way, if I am going to Apple Silicon and there is a program that the developer has not updated for Apple Silicon, apparently Rosetta 2 will be able to handle that, and that's something else that we hopefully will see a demo of.
Yes,
and they're showing some apps now, including iPhone and iPad apps that will run on the Mac. And
but
what
I mean, I saw HBO Max there. That's not what I'm looking for when I'm seeing a brand new line of Macs. I don't want to know that it's going to run my HBO stream. It's like,
hey, I wanted to. I need that Snyder cut on my new Mac. You know what I'm saying?
True. So, okay, for people, we mentioned Rosetta there. For people who aren't aware, so Rosetta is basically the system that allows you to be able to run both Intel-based apps and these new Mac Silicon apps. So it's a kind of a getting the left hand to talk to the right situation, so that
kind of like a code translator. It's translating
exactly
one to
like
the other,
the original Rosetta Stone, which is like what I thought you were giving the props to. I was like, oh, someone's
the OG.
Yeah.
Thank you. Otherwise, we wouldn't be talking right now, probably.
And that's a lot of stuff that we don't see as users. But obviously, after WWDC, we saw this developer kit, the $500, sort of looked like a little mini Mac Mini, to get developers used to the new ecosystem that they would be working with. Because whilst you just think it's all very simple to, you only have to plug an Android phone into a Mac and see how much of a nightmare that situation is. I do it almost every day, and it's always a nightmare.
Android file transfer, not giving thumbs up for that. That is not a good experience.
It might seem simple, it's the same Mac, but you've got a new architecture, you've got an entirely new way of working, and you want to make the system and the switchover and the transition as seamless as possible. So we're seeing a sizzle reel here of, a whole bunch of different users. These are game devs talking about how they've actually been able to create super smooth games on the new M1.
Claire, as I say, the big difference though between the Intel transitions and the Apple Silicon one is back in 2006, they didn't have games and stuff like this on the Mac. It was like, yay, Word works on the new computer, Excel works on the new computer. So now we're seeing these really complex apps that do very complicated things. Some that I will never use in my entire life. I'm sure you both would say the same thing. So
this is Apple leveraging the App Store for iOS directly into the Mac. And what you're seeing is if you work in iOS apps, I think this is like a dream come true, because you could then say, cool, we can do stuff on a Mac. If you're a Mac person and you're thinking about what happens to you, I don't know, but I think you kind of evolve. But I think that this does seem like Apple is pushing the stuff that we've used on mobile into that Mac universe, or what's already been happening on iPads. That's the gist that I was getting from that. And that also allows Apple to control the ecosystem that they've already been doing. So there'll be a lot of pushback from app developers, and there's already some reports of some that may choose to work only in browser only or not be part of the store. So now we're back in the campus. But that was like the very quick run through of the apps that they were showing, and the developers talking was, I think, about the excitement, like you said, getting some of those tablet, some of the iPad apps and some of the stuff for graphics editing, some of those workflows, and push them over to the Mac more.
But also, do I really want to be playing what is effectively an iPad game on my laptop? Having that ability to scale up and bring those iPad, even iPhone games, and say, look, it's all part of one ecosystem. It's like, there's a reason I have my phone and I just play, I don't want to call them crummy, but like slightly less advanced games on my phone when I'm on the bus or something, when I used to be on the bus and when I used to leave my house. Now I want to know that it's going to be a a chip that's actually capable of handling some tougher games. And I mean, yes, a Mac isn't
here we
really
go.
a gaming machine, but
here's the Mac. They are showing it off, and it looks just like a MacBook Air.
all right.
It is the MacBook Air with M1. It is the MacBook Air. Two USB-C ports on the side. I don't know if
I would not be
ports
shocked
on the
if
other
it has.
side.
If it is, I will not be shocked if it is just called MacBook Air. If they don't put any like delineation.
It's the new MacBook.
They don't want people
Air.
to worry about it. They just don't want people to think about it.
That's
So
what
this
it's
is a
called. It's called the new
13-inch
Mac.
Air?
It's called MacBook Air. Yep, and they're
Called it.
opening it up, and it's spinning. Only two on one side. Doesn't look like there are USB-C ports on the other side. And yeah.
So that's
is
interesting that they start with the MacBook Air, because that is traditionally the machine that is designed for quick on the go, flip it open. That is the ARM use case. That is the
Toyota
on.
Corolla of laptops from Apple.
What about the
Everyone has
12-inch MacBook? That was the one. I mean, that just disappeared, and it looks like they're not going to ever put that back out.
Yeah, but I mean,
was
you think
that
about
was
the
upsetting.
time they first pulled that MacBook Air out of the manila folder, and he was just mentioning that earlier. You know, it's slick. They're saying now it's the best-selling 13-inch notebook. So if you've got that really lightweight, easy device, that's great, because that's the use case. That's the selling point. That's different to a 16-inch i9.
3.5 times
It is very
faster than
different.
the previous MacBook Air is what they're claiming. That's a pretty big jump. I don't know in what, but that's they didn't say exactly in what types of things it would be faster. But
we wouldn't get that. We would not get that gain in speed just by like a new generation of Intel chip.
No, 5 times faster graphics. So these
That's
are
what I'm trying to say.
That is a
numbers.
big. These are gigantic numbers. Well, that's where it can totally clean up, because those basic integrated graphics and the entry level, especially the entry level configurations of what the MacBook Air had, I'm sure this blows it away.
And that's,
was it Intel HD was the graphics that were like the lower end laptops or still are until today, I guess.
So yeah, on the previous generation, and Scott, you'll be able to remind me when the last Air came out. But we've got
this year.
So 3.5.
They replaced the keyboard.
Of course, yes. So this was in the April.
So unfortunately, they just upgrade. Yeah, so now, like, what do you do? Is this like instantly replacing the one you just got? 9 times faster machine learning performance. So that's
and the
pretty giant. Yeah.
These numbers are huge, but Scott and Claire, to ask you guys, do you think this is something that's like you can go buy it today, or it's gonna be like you'll see it early next year? I could imagine them pushing it back just because of what you said, that people are still buying that, and I'm guaranteed that old ones still be available at discount.
I think it might be available soon.
That for a couple of years, they've said. So, sorry, Scott, you were saying?
I think it'll be available soon, but I don't know if all the models will be available. If this is, this might be the one available very soon, and the others might be staggered. If I can guess from Apple's product delivery performance this year, that would be my guess. But they're talking about how it's very silent now. I mean, this is really cool, because if you want to get a MacBook Air, the MacBook Air had 15 hours of battery life. So
what's that? We've got
18 hours in video playback.
15 hours battery life.
6 hours more battery life. So that's gigantic. That's kind of
huge,
that year, like 5 years ago when the MacBook Air got a really big bump. That's what people care about. This is like that sweet spot from like 2015 when the MacBook Air was like everyone's laptop. But I don't know if the new Apple chip is going to make everyone leap over, but this looks like that type of a giant bump in performance.
So let's recap. I want to go back over what we've seen here. We've seen 3.5 times faster CPU. We have seen up to 18 hours of battery life when you're talking about video playback, 15 hours when you're talking about wireless browsing, 3 times faster as a machine. This is all just with a change to the M1 chip over Intel, which, as we say, was released in the spring. So
webcam improvements.
Keyboard has no touch bar, has Touch ID. So it's very much like the MacBook Air as it currently exists.
So are you guys seeing this about the webcam here, guys? We got like a new webcam, better dynamic range, auto face detection.
That's what I was going to tell you. Yeah, white balance is not a Face ID.
P3 wide color gamut. There you go.
There you go. So I bet price is coming up any moment now.
Well, and I was gonna say real fast, I remember I worked in an Apple store during that time, Scott, you were talking about the Air, where it was like one day it was
Here it
like
is.
7 hours, and then it went to like 11 hours.
$9.99.
There
Sorry,
you go, less than
$9.99
1,000.
price. $8.99 for education. So pretty much slides in at the same price as, like, it's pretty much the same price. What did it start at before? Was it $9.99? I should know this.
I think it's $9.99.
I'm just.
But either way, you're not paying more to get this new thing. It just is. It's just level. That's what consumer. I think if I'm looking as a consumer, I'm like, I don't want to pay more for that. I'll just, it's the same price. Okay, cool. They get better webcam.
So it totally
and longer
sucks.
battery.
Yeah, this sucks if you bought a MacBook Air like recently, except for the fact that compatibility questions that we don't know about. For the rest
which is
of
the other question, right? So I suppose, I mean, that's an impressive performance, but I will say, just as the not the cynic, but just as a, not to be gloriously effusive in my praise, I suppose, is that the Air is very much the use case of an ARM chip. It is the thin and light, the always on design.
Here's a sorry about that. There's a second Mac coming right up. And by the way, that MacBook Air does not have a fan in it anymore.
Wow,
right,
that's huge.
It's an SSD. So
they just said, they were just like, goodbye fan, we don't need you.
So 3 times more performance or 5 times more graphics without a fan. That's insane.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I wanted to just tell you that they're showing a new Mac. The Mini is the next one to get it. So again, like, the developers had the Mini. Developers had a Mac Mini earlier this year. Dan Ackerman looked at one with an A12Z processor. That was the one that people were using to get used to the app transition.
That was the development kit that came out of WWDC, yeah.
Yeah, and this looks just like it. It's just like a Mac. It is, again, a Mac Mini. Like, I don't see anything different without having seen the back of it, but it's Mac Mini. It's a little,
we expected a Mac Mini to come this year. That was, in circles that we were speaking to, that was the most expected device to come out of the new Apple Silicon. And potentially the things I was hearing was that this may be the one that would go on sale first because, it's easy for them to sell. I mean, but obviously you mentioned there that that the Air was the one we were shown first. So, if we're thinking about what's coming out for Christmas.
I have to admit, I do want that Air a lot. Just because my old computer is bad. My current work computer has terrible battery life. And, like, I just need something that's going to handle doing stuff. But yeah,
that's all we need in life, something that's going to handle doing stuff. It's all you can hope for.
Doing stuff all the time. So Mac Mini is just, they're not saying anything interesting here, but it's what Mac Minis do. But you're right, where they're going to clean up on this initially looks like the underpowered entry-level ones that could really see a big boost in power now compared to what those have been offering. Again, a 6-fold increase in graphics performance, they said, over the last Mac Mini. So, like, that's giant. I'm really curious what happens when we start getting to the Pro line, and whether are they even going to address that right now, in terms of how you handle, really stepped up graphics beyond that.
So I just sent our wonderful Stephen Beecham an image that showed all of the specs in kind of one easy sheet there, and it's got all of the features that we're going to expect to see out of the Mac Air. So it's going to be running on this M1 chip. It's got the Mac OS Big Sur new software they're expecting, 16 gigs of memory, up to 2 terabytes SSD, Touch ID, Wi-Fi 6. 2 Thunderbolt ports, 18 hours of battery life, up to 3.5 times faster CPU and 5 times faster graphics.
They're saying that the new Mac Mini is 5 times faster than the leading desktop PC. Again, I want to know what specs they're comparing against, but that's they're basically just touting this as a great computer, period, as opposed to like an entry thing. So it looks like they're also pushing the Mac Mini into a different territory with this.
Or it's going back to its roots, because the Mac Mini was always kind of that. And then it's also like, it was always the best value for a computer you could buy, I think, from Apple. And the fact that they're putting this power back into it, I think it's brilliant.
It has USB 4 Thunderbolt, 2 of those, HDMI 2.0, USB-A, 2 ports, 3.5 millimeter headphone jack, Ethernet, Pro Display XDR can run at 6K.
Okay, and so they were saying 15 times faster machine learning. So what I'm seeing here is that they're really advising it as a great device for scientists and engineers for using things like TensorFlow machine learning. If that's your jam, so maybe they talk about
servers.
Yeah.
Wow, and not wow, but it starts at $699, which is $100 less than before. Wow, so, I mean, sorry to sound excited, but it's this kind of reminds me of the Oculus Quest 2. Like when companies do like the performance bump and the price drop, it's interesting to me. But it's competitively priced for an Apple product, and yeah, so they're putting up the whole spec thing rundown again on this, but they haven't said release dates.
Which is, of course, the big question, the elephant in the room.
Well, and I would expect too, like, again, you want to see a couple things. I think we want to see the MacBook Air because that's the common language. That's the universal, work machine that so many people have. And then you want to see these little things like the Mac Mini. I would love to see even something a little more pro that has even more power. But maybe the idea is that these little computers can also have this power. But it would be cool to see like an iMac, version of something like this, because I think that's a sweet spot for a lot of people. But the MacBook Air is going to be your best selling.
Here we go. You want to hear about something else? They're about to talk about something else. I imagine it might be the iMac.
You want to hear about one more thing? I've got one more.
They're like, but we're not done.
Things.
You want to see it in a higher performance thing? This is what they just teased in this. So we're now seeing something bigger.
Well, if there are
while we wait for that,
products, you gotta wonder
thank you. It's just
not
brought
going
up
to come out.
The Mac Mini. Yeah. So there's all the specs for you, up to 60% more energy efficiency, 3 times faster CPU.
The Touch Bar is back. It's a MacBook Pro. Touch Bar returned. 13-inch MacBook Pro.
Never went away.
No, I mean it returns for another round.
It survived. It survived a generation.
It survives. Yeah.
It survives. It didn't get cut. There's potential with the Touch Bar. Just not there yet. Oh, they do have the escape key on this one. That's good.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's actually So here we go.
Escape key.
What makes the Pro this time?
All right. So 13-inch MacBook Pro. Who called it? Was that on my bingo list at the start of this keynote? Who remembers?
It was on your bingo list. We got to give some chips and fish to you as well, Claire.
Time is meaningless to me now.
Time for a chip reward.
No chips. I have coffee. Delicious coffee.
I'm getting dry mouth now from all the chips.
Yeah, strategically, your snack choice wasn't great.
No, I'm getting all dried out. 8-core CPU, 2.8 times faster performance. The thing is, a MacBook Air is a lot faster. Do you really need a Pro? I feel like, you're seeing all those gains on an Air, those would exceed what the last Pro was. I would think.
It depends if the Pro is enough of a step up above the Air, but the Pro was always more of your video editing machine. It was more of for photographers or.
And you actually have a separate graphics card in the Pros versus a discrete one.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I'm interested. So this is a 8-core GPU, again on the M1, which is 5 times faster. But up to 3 times faster than the best-selling Windows laptop in its class. So I don't know what that means.
That might be the Dell XPS. What's the kind of? I'm trying to think of the latest.
The Dell 15.
It can play back 8K ProRes footage.
Okay. I mean, I don't even know if my eyes.
I'm running this by Patrick.
No, I mean it's good because Red cameras will be very happy, but they also have a very good relationship with Apple already. Again, also as mentioned that ProRes RAW format that Apple has with cameras, we have to go through an external display to do that. Also, they're showing Davinci Resolve again, which is that coloring program that's very universal throughout the video world, which is pretty great.
So what do we have? We had $999 for the Air, and we had $699 for the Mac Mini.
This will be like $14.99 is my guess, or $13.99.
Okay.
But this has got a fan.
It's a 13-inch one? 13-inch, yeah. Very cool.
We don't know the price yet. Yeah. 17 hours of battery for the web.
I say if they hit like $11.99 or $12.99, that would be amazing.
20 hours of video playback battery life. Longest battery life in a Mac.
That might be your new Netflix book, Claire. That's a lot of Netflix.
That's a lot of Netflix.
It's a lot of Netflix. That is
veins.
a lot of
that's
the crown.
compared to 18 on the Air, though. That was the Air had 18 hours of playback. I'm just interested in how much of a step above the MacBook Pro is going to be.
20 hours of video playback. Wow.
They added the mics that are on the 16-inch. I think those high quality mics that are on the new iPad Pro and also on the 16-inch MacBook Pro. So there, in case you want to record audio directly from your Mac, which I don't know who does that, you probably would plug in a microphone. But it is a high quality mic on the iPad, as I discovered.
Well, I mean, think about talking about like Zoom calls and stuff. Not everyone has their headphones, and you know.
Yeah, no, it's a great microphone array. So if it's anything like on the iPad Pro, 2 Thunderbolt ports with USB 4,
a separate camera ISP. That's amazing. Image signal processor. That's like what we see on our phones and iPad as well.
Well, good to know that our next live show will all be looking gloriously neat and tidy and crisp and no.
Well, there's that, and I have to say, I love when Apple brings up the Secure Enclave because that was the name of my my second improv group. That is no more, but yeah. So I have to do. It's a joke I do every year.
That one where it is.
I love Secure Enclave.
I'm not used to a MacBook Pro boasting longer battery life. It starts at $12.99.
Okay,
there you go.
$12.99.
Yes. $11.99 for education.
That's not bad. I wonder if they have a 15-inch version. Do you think that's going to be like $14 or $15.99 at least? At least.
Well, how much storage? Up to 2 terabyte SSD, up to 16 gigs of RAM.
Well, Touch what's ID. The base storage? That's what we want to know. What's the $12.99?
It's going to be 128. It'll be or
512. It'll be 512. I don't know. Maybe 512?
The base.
What's really interesting with this, though, is it previously used to be that, am I going to get the i5, i7, i9? That's going to increase my price. We're looking at one chip now, so it's
ID, by the way.
There's no kind of customizability there.
Right. There's no like upper echelon version of this, but I guess you're paying for RAM and storage, and we'll see what that configures out to.
And we've got the wonderful Beach, who's shown us all of those specs if you missed them as they were running through them there. So we have a 2.8 times faster CPU, 5 times faster graphics, up to 20 hours battery life, which was compared to, I think it was 18 on the Air when you're talking about wireless, when you're talking about video playback, 16 gigs memory, crazy. 2 terabytes SSD, Touch ID, Wi-Fi 6 once again. It looks like same ports as the Air. 11 times faster machine learning. So it's sort of it's significant improvements on the previous range of MacBooks. But to me, the delta between the Air and the MacBook Pro isn't as much as I might have expected it to be. And that's because you're talking about what is, I guess, essentially they might have changed slight elements of the M1 chip if they put it in different machines. But you're not talking about a smaller processor in the Air and then going up to an i9 in the Mac.
Well, I got to wonder too, like
they're available next week. You can get them next week.
That's huge.
You can order them right now. So available, and Big Sur is available November 12th.
November 12th. Okay, so that's what? That's 2 days from now.
That's exciting too. Yeah, that's very
landing
cool.
on Thursday.
I mean, the battery life now is like a big reason to go Pro, which is not ever a thing I would have said before. So it's interesting. Like that stands as one of the strongest Pro features now, is that like up to 20 hours of battery. But I feel like the leaps have gone so big on battery now. I don't know if I need that extra bump on top of bump with it. Depending
I would
on
argue though, and back to Claire's point with the Delta stuff, I think it's also we think of power, we don't think of the longevity of that power. So if I'm a video editor, I'm editing like 6 or 7 hours a day. That's different than like if I do it occasionally, right? So I think that sustained power and sustained battery life is what we're hoping for in the Pro models that would outlast that. And we won't know until we get our hands on it.
Yeah, but for me, if I'm at home, right, I am connected. Like I don't feel, I mean, obviously everyone's use cases are different, but I am going to be trying to stay on power if I'm doing video editing. For me, the processor, the power and performance, when I say power, I mean grunt, like the performance of the processor when I'm video editing, far more important than battery life on a more like on a higher spec machine. So for me, the big question here is, it's what, $3,000-ish if you're going to get the non-customized version of the 16-inch MacBook Pro with the i9 processor, the Intel. It's roughly around that $3,000. Yeah, that $3,000 mark. $3,000 to $1,300. Wow, that's awesome. I'm paying a lot less. But I just wonder the performance of the M1 chip compared to top of the line Intel. Are you really what's the difference? I really want to benchmark. I really want to see what's happening when I'm running tough programs, not when I'm just running an iOS game on my Mac, because how fun is that? It's what am I actually capable of doing when I put this new MacBook to the test compared to my Intel MacBook? And that's the
And I bet we're going to see lots of review videos that do exactly that, Claire. I bet we're going to see a lot of people like, hey, this is a side-by-side of the 16-inch Intel one versus maybe the 13-inch new one, and seeing how long it takes to render a video or transcode that. And that's where it goes back to that system on the chip stuff where they have those shortcuts built in, right? So you have stuff to take advantage of those higher end tasks and make them more efficient. So that I feel like the numbers thing is impressive, and I completely agree with you, Claire, because rendering, I was just rendering video this week, and a lot of it for all the iPhone stuff I was doing, and my battery, if I had it unplugged, it would drop from like 30% down to 10% in about like 30 minutes because it's just constantly churning all these videos out so I could upload them for an editor to edit, you know?
Well, looks like we're
yeah, my battery life
here.
is crap on my current Mac. Like it heats up like a toaster on my lap. Like I don't know what's going on, but you know, that type of like efficiency on a laptop would be most welcome. I'm also really curious because I use iOS apps all the time on the iPad Pro with a trackpad and keyboard, and it actually works really well. And I'm starting to wonder what it would feel like now that I could run those apps on a MacBook from a pretty big library that I have. And would that feel like that crossover that I was thinking about where, you know, sure it doesn't have a touch screen, but in a lot of ways, the MacBook starts to feel more like a power iPad for a lot of tasks.
So we've got Tim Cook here back in the cafeteria. Gosh, it feels like saying one of the most, you know, influential CEOs in the world is shooting from the cafeteria. And he's doing
that's
his
truthful.
wrapping up
That is
speech.
complete truth.
Yeah, he's doing his wrapping up speech, talking about what a year it's been. He's really excited to see what everyone creates with these new Macs, the most powerful ever. Stay safe, stay well.
Wait till you see who appears at the end.
And
John Hodgman. John Hodgman is on. Introducing himself as a PC. They're bringing back the Mac PC ad.
You love to see it.
He's talking about like, oh, I've got a fan. I am not efficient with battery. Fast, I'm fast. Check this out. Oh my God, is Justin Long about to appear?
Well, as someone who does follow John Hodgman, he has a beard, so there's no beard here. What's going on?
This is like a post-credit scene. Is the first Apple post-credit?
And that's, I'm not ready for that world. Like, okay, Thanos is gone. So now can I leave the cinema? No, you can't.
Stick around for the bonus Apple scene at the end of the keynote. You got to stay in your seat.
If it has to be John Hodgman, that's worth it for me. I love this dude.
That was a pretty good cameo. I miss John Hodgman. And
yes,
I'm now wondering if there's going to be another scene at the end. The second, like the Marvel double scene.
Oh, we're going to get details on the production, health and safety. Yeah, there'll definitely be some sort of Marvel, you know, but Spider-Man will be back.
Right. PC will be back
in
future Apple event.
Well, and I know we want to talk about the Macs, but I say the one thing I always loved about those ads was it wasn't like PC was horrible. It was like you like PC and you like the Mac person. You like John Hodgman and Justin Long, but you wanted to buy the Mac. So
yeah, no, it wasn't. It didn't feel like as much of a mean ad, you know. And also that was when it was, I guess, maybe more of a challenger brand, so you can punch up when you're the challenger brand. All right, guys. So that's the end of the event. I wanna talk through what we saw. I'm going to do a real quick wrap up for you guys and just give you the basic rundown. We saw, and if Beach, we could bring up those stats for the MacBook Air again. We saw the 13-inch Air, which is obviously coming out next week. Buy it now. I don't know. It's just ready to go. There we are. So similar design you've always known, those two Thunderbolt ports. We've got a 3.5 times faster CPU. We've got a 5 times faster graphics, which remember are going to be integrated into the M1 chip. Magic Keyboard, Secure Enclave, 18 hours of battery life when we talk about video playback. We've got Touch ID, Wi-Fi 6, up to 2 terabytes SSD, which means goodbye to the fan. 9 times faster machine learning, and the 13.3-inch Retina display and 16 gigs of memory. So that one was selling for $9.99. It's going to be available from next week, $8.99 if you're talking about the education version. That same M1 chip. Oh, what do we got there, Patrick?
I would say I was checking out the Apple Store. It's down right now, which always means they're probably uploading all the new products and stuff. So we'll see that
just
very
in
shortly.
a matter of moments, you'll be able to pre-order.
Almost there. Almost there.
Wow. So
I've got it. No, yeah, almost there. Yeah, I thought I had it.
Education price, obviously, there for everyone who's got homeschooling kids right now. And then you've got the same M1 chip, which we talked about. It was going to bring better performance, better battery life, all of those features all coming to that M1 chip, which is also going to be rolled out in the MacBook Air. And that's coming out for $12.99. So there we go. Thank you, Beach. We've got those M1 stats right there. So, oh, that's right. Okay, that's where the music.
These are always, by the way, I love when they show these slides at Apple events. Usually, obviously, it's an iPhone event or iPad event. When they show all the things that processor can do, it's just very, it's like,
well,
wow.
It's also really great to just be able to screenshot them and then be like, I didn't remember the 1,400 things they just said. So these
and sometimes they don't mention stuff that's on the slide. And I think that's really fun to go deep.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Those little,
I keep expecting I'll miss something, like in the corner it'll say dinosaurs, and you'll just be like, what?
Also a time travel machine. Like, so I'm just
like,
pardon?
What's that little square in the corner that had like an icon and it disappeared?
Yeah.
I didn't even
I had a question about the time machine capabilities. I feel like we really glossed over that. Craig touched on it, but could we just loop back to that?
Yeah, what's the West Wing reunion on the chip? It's like, what?
So we're talking about an octa-core chip, super efficient CPU cores, and also high performance cores. HDR video processing. We saw things like 3D animation rendering. There we go. We've got those specs up on the screen. So 8-core GPU and 8-core CPU, 16 billion transistors, all of the transistors you can imagine, and capable of running, I think it was 11 trillion, I don't remember the number, a lot of processors at once. Scott?
So we were talking also about ARM chips, and this is the whole thing. It's like, you talk about like ARM PCs and like ARM PC performance. This is not like that. Like, like there are not ARM PCs that boast 5x performance over a previous product. Like this is a super powered type of a chip that is meant to be superior to anything that came before it, not an alternative. And so I hesitate to even call it ARM in the same way like we wouldn't call an iPhone or iPad an ARM
But that's also partially the way Apple has branded it. They've been very much resistant to call it ARM, and that plays to their favor.
Well, we see them do that with other.
What does it mean? Like, what is an ARM processor? Like, what does that mean for anyone? Like, it's a strange. It's just as brandy.
I say we see them do that with other components too. Like for the iPhones, they don't talk about it being Gorilla Glass, but it's the back is Gorilla Glass, right? But it's their flavor that they design with that. So I think
there's two things playing there. There's the element that you talk about. What does it mean to the average consumer? What it doesn't necessarily mean much. What's going on under the hood? But I do think names are important because it does kind of allow you to compare apples to apples. And when people say to me, oh, just, airdrop it to me, I'm like, that's a proprietary technology. And there's a similar thing on Android. You speak to some people who think it is this fantastic new form of technology, and it's like, okay, no, it is a similar architecture to what we've seen. What Apple is doing is they are licensing that design capability so that they can say to ARM, okay, you give us the instruction set, we will then go away and tinker this and tune that, and we're going to clock that higher and do all these things, but they're still buying it from the ARM store.
Well, and Claire, that raises like a good point too, because like there's a thing of like being there, people like to make fun of Apple for not being first, but claiming something. But if Apple adopts it, it usually gets adopted big, right? More people see that. But the other side, going back to the ARM thing, would be interesting is when Apple moved over to Intel, all of a sudden we had those Hackintoshes, right? Are we going to see something like that where people are able to run some of these PC things on these non-ARM chips?
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested, and I think the big question that comes out of this for me is what we're going to see difference-wise between an Air, which has long been lightweight. I imagine it's like, go do my work in Starbucks and then meet the girls for drinks afterwards. Got a very Sex and the City vibe there. And then when I'm using my MacBook Pro, it's like, I'm a high-powered executive and I'm going to a meeting. I think I'm a bit tired, but also you've got two different devices and they're very different use cases. And Scott with the chips. You've got two different devices, two very different use cases, but they've got different guts in the machine. And so that's where the difference is. Whereas this, you've got that M1 in both machines. So Scott, I think you asked this before. Would I go for the Pro or am I just going to get the Air? Because all those improvements are pretty impressive. I might just stick with that one.
Well, and this is the strange divide between the 13-inch Air and Pro already. Like the one that really had the graphics bump was the 16-inch MacBook Pro, which they didn't talk about. And so I think that, you know, the 13-inch Pro is always a bit of a concept versus like an absolutely clear bump. You know, like I agree. It's sort of like what are you getting that makes it pro-ier? Because they always lacked that extra discrete graphics. Now that they both have this, and where do you land with those, and what are the defining lines? And then it goes to that question of when does the iMac arrive? When does the 16-inch MacBook Pro? When did they beef up, you know, and the Mac Pro, which reports and said they're eventually going to build to? That's a whole other beast, and they may have a very different concept in mind for how they build that architecture. Because power efficiency was like the word of the day here. That those may not matter in quite the same way if you're unleashing it on a bigger beast, or I don't know. So I got that to roundabout. Get back to your question. Yeah, I would think I would just want to get the Air. I feel like if you're making all those gains, but then it's like the iPhones. If you have one that's a step up that gains a little bit more, you might just want to say, okay, I'm all in. I'll just get the one that can do the most and spend a little bit more money.
Especially because people are probably buying one of these. Like my MacBook Air, I bought at university, so it's 4 million years old, because I actually studied under Plato. But yeah, it's a device you keep for longer, and it's a device you want to kind of hang on to. So it's the question I remember my old editor used to ask me, like, if someone said, you know, in a year's time when your phone's a bit slow and you can't upgrade, say, an iPhone with an extra SD card, if someone said to you, give me $300 and I will suddenly double the capacity of your iPhone, would you do it? And if you go, yes, of course, then buy the higher capacity now, buy the better machine now. And if someone says, throw me a bit of money and I'll make it instantly like this, that's the thing that says, spend a bit of money now, invest a bit of money now. I remember I was chatting to a friend about upgrading a Mac. She wanted to get a better machine. She was saying, I need to upgrade my Mac and I need to upgrade my my iPhone. The iPhone was smashed, it was hurting her fingers. She was getting glass in her fingers. That's always a sign that you should probably upgrade the phone. But when you don't have limitless cash, you need to obviously make some kind of payoffs and work out what you really should be doing. But I think with a Mac, yeah, you're going to be using it for maybe, I mean, for me, my Air has lasted me for years and years and years. Kind of going for the slightly higher spec machine to future-proof it for yourself, potentially something you should do. But also remember, this is first generation of a new technology. So are you going to be upgrading it soon anyway? Are you getting on board? So many questions, too many questions.
Well, the fact that Apple is like confident enough to release all their favorite computers as with this chip right now and put them on sale so you can get them in a week is pretty amazing. So, but again, it's going to come down to that real world thing. I mean, going back to when you were studying under Plato there, I think what's interesting is I was selling computers, and that would always be the question, do I go between the MacBook Air or the MacBook Pro? And you would explain the Mac Pro and people's eyes would be like, whoa. And then you explain the MacBook Air like, oh, well, let's get this one. It's more affordable, has longer battery life. And so I think it's going to, those are the two metrics I think. It's like, is the battery life going to last you a long time for years on end? And then on the other side of it is, I think something like that Mac Mini is kind of brilliant, especially right now when there are a lot of people hurting financially. Because if you have a display or a monitor, you have a Mac or keyboard and mouse, then that is just an amazing thing to get into. But it's weird because it's been such an amazing year for all this stuff that Apple's been releasing. And yet I think the cheapest thing we saw is $600 today.
Yeah, I mean, you're very right, Patrick. It's very easy for us as people on CNET and hosts. We get excited about new technology, but we do have to remember that this is a year unlike any other, and there's a lot of people thinking about the best way to get the most bang out of their buck. And you're right. If you can get an existing monitor, plug your Mac Mini into that, fantastic. I think for me, and I'm going to throw this question out to you guys. I asked at the top of the show, okay, you've got the choice. You're broken today. You know, your old MacBook has carked it. I don't know if you guys use that phrase or if it's just a weirdly Australian one. Your old MacBook has carked it. It's bitten the dust.
How do you spell that, by the way? I just want to make sure
I guess it's a C-A-R-K, carked it.
Caster.
Yeah.
I thought you meant like caster, like the wheel. Okay, cool. Caster.
Yeah.
I'm bringing the sandworm in for this question.
Sure.
So weird.
We will cut to the sandworm because I'm interested in Sandy's opinion here. She has a lot
need a
to say on
sandworm
the
can,
topic.
by the way. Yeah.
But your MacBook has just carked it. Do you buy the MacBook Air, the Pro, or do you buy an Intel machine? Because they are still supporting those for another 2 years. And we saw the last Intels launched in spring of this year. So there's plenty of new devices that are not old, that are not redundant. Let's start with you, Patrick.
Well, I would say I know you didn't mean it this way. I just want to make sure people didn't hear it. So if I have an Intel computer, it's still going to work in 2 or 3 years. Like it's not going to just stop, you know what I'm saying? But they're going to stop selling new Intel machines probably in 2 years is the thing. Yeah. Well, I think for me, it comes down to 2 things. It's going to be completely honest, price. If I can get a really good Intel machine and they're lowering that price, which they usually do when they have new machines, then yeah, I might snag that. But if it was something like, it's weird. I'm up for a new work computer soon. I was talking to like an IT person about it. And that conversation was last week. And I'm like watching this, I'm like, I wonder, is it worth taking the risk on getting this? Like, will this, like, what happens if there's a bug or, like all those frightful questions because it's first generation pop in your head and you're like, but you hear like 5 times more whatever power and you hear 20-hour life. I'm like, oh, maybe, yeah, that I don't have that anywhere near that right now. Maybe I should like push for something like that. And that's where the size of Apple comes in, right? Because yeah, they have their problems just like any other company, but their products are pretty reliable. Maybe not keyboards for the last couple of years, but I think in every other way, these computers are very reliable. And I would lean toward getting a Silicon Mac. I know, yeah, if it was for like work or something where if it's personal, I don't know, I might go toward that Mac Mini, or if I could get the Intel Mac Mini for a discount, I would go for that, to be completely honest.
Okay, how about you, Scott?
I think it depends. If you have like a legacy bunch of software, or you have things that for work that you need to run, and we don't know the answers to those questions, this is still a question mark until the reviews come out and we know more about that type of stuff. I mean, I think if you're like getting something for your home and you're already like in the Apple ecosystem, like your iPad or iPhone, you're going to have a lot of apps that you're going to be able to plug into this. And I think like those will run. And I think unless the Intel one went on sale for a lot of money, I wouldn't do that because it seems like a timed rental. Like, like at what point does that fall off the cliff and then you don't have support for it? Where, I don't know where Apple's going with their chips either, but with the gains in things like battery life and performance and the price being equivalent from what it was, I would definitely go for the Apple Silicon choice. But I'm hesitant about if you have a bunch of old software, old files, things that you want to run, things you want to load from some other developer, some open flexibility. I don't know, and this is the part that I would say like wait a bit and see what people who step in the waters first find out, if you can bear that. I don't know what availability is going to be like, if it's going to end up selling out later, but I think it depends on how desperate you are. I think if you got an existing Mac that wasn't this, like you said, you'd be fine. And if you get a sale, just live with that or stick with the thing you've got. But I'm tempted to get the MacBook Air as my next one, but I really need to know, not, since I don't have my hands on one, I need to know like what its quirks are, if there are any, before I throw money into it.
That's a really good point. And, you know, you mentioned old apps there, old software, old programs. There's talk that there won't be boot camp on this. So if you're a Windows user and you like to use Windows programs on your Mac, then you may be out of luck on that front. And if you've got older apps, I mean, I just upgraded my OS the other day and lost access to my Audacity, which I use just when I'm doing basic audio editing. Love Audacity, right? And sometimes you just want some of those old favorite apps that are the workhorses, that they're not necessarily got the most bells and whistles, but you just know how they work and you love them. That's not going to be something that maybe a small dev team will upgrade to Silicon straight away, or that some of the older apps are going to port over to Silicon. So that's another issue there.
Well, also like think about work stuff. Like you have those work like protocol software for like logging in and stuff. Like those things need to get updated. So I don't think we're gonna see, I don't think we're gonna see any companies like buying thousands of these like today, right? Maybe that'll happen in a few months, and Apple works with businesses to figure that out. It is curious though. I think Scott, you were talking about the compatibility of older apps, and I was thinking back. You know, this sounds so stupid to say, but it's so obvious. Like we have YouTube. And I think if I was a developer and I had like a weird app that had a loyal following, that you would have that video of it running on a Mac with Silicon and showing that people that it wasn't buggy. Because those are things that we didn't have that access to like 2006 necessarily, where you're like, well, I hope this still works. I hope Rosetta really does its job for a few years. And I mean, I don't want to like doom the people buying Intel Mac who bought one yesterday. I would check that. I think Apple has a 14-day return policy. But I would say that if you did buy an Intel Mac, not to scare people too, that their computer is just going to be obsolete in 2 years. But, you know, the idea that some apps on there might not be back supported in 2 or 3 years is a reality too.
See, I don't know. I think for me, if I'm buying today, I'm not the kind of first gen person. I like a company to work out its kinks before it comes and hangs out with me. You know, just like a good relationship. Get your kinks out somewhere else. But I think for me, the thing that I'm concerned about with, I'm also due for an upgrade on my work laptop, and I'm just playing around a lot more with video editing on my own time. And iMovie on my old Air really isn't cutting it. And so that's something I really want to get my teeth more into. And I'm just concerned that we won't see we get a lot of talk of high performance, but will we really see high performance when it comes to some of those more complex tasks on even a Pro? So for me, I was genuinely considering, if I needed to upgrade by the end of the year, that maybe I'd do it on an Intel and get one of those really like gutsy i9 machines. It's hard because then you start to talk about cost, and when you are literally doubling the cost of the MacBook Pro, which is at $1,300, going up to a $2,700-$2,800 $3,000 Intel machine, that's obviously, I'm not made of money. I know, contrary to popular opinion, actually mostly cellular and carbon based. I don't know. For me, I want my next machine to be way more powerful than what I've been working with. And I just need to see, and thankfully we will see, because our reviewers are those awesome people, we will see how these really benchmark, how they act, how they perform when it comes to tough tasks. Because a demo on stage, we've all seen, the demos are always glossy, especially when you can pre-film them in a pandemic. But the matter of getting it home, getting on your table and saying, what can this do? I know Dan Ackerman will definitely be wanting to put these through their paces. So it's for me, I'm cautiously optimistic, but I'm still considering my options, so to speak. So
I think that's a really great way of saying it, Claire. Cautiously optimistic. Considering, because I'm sorry, real quick, Scott. I was just gonna say that I think there's three things. One, I'm really excited. I think this is so cool. Those numbers are really big numbers, and I can't wait for people to get their hands on it. But truth be told, the things come out over months, right? The keyboard problems in the last generation before this came out over the course of months, the people having it and slowly it bubbling up, right? And I think compatibility stuff is going to come out over the course of months. And even a review is going to be great because we're going to see it like we saw with the Mac Pros, right? People would have here's Adobe Premiere running on it, and it's not much faster than on this, or here is this program running on it, just to show that power and speed. And I think that's going to show us a bit. But I think the little scene between a MacBook Air and a MacBook Pro, that's going to be a fascinating position to be in. And I see two of us, maybe three of us here, who probably fit in that seam of being between more of a consumer machine and something that needs a little more power and oomph, you know? But Scott, I didn't mean to interrupt. Sorry, go ahead.
If you're interested in the idea of an iPad thing that's going to convert, and you wonder when that's going to arrive, there's no clear answer. But again, I feel like it's a ... till something like that eventually happens. This is not the final form of Apple's computers, just something that looks exactly like last year's MacBook Air. So that gives me pause. If you're happy with the form of a laptop, so again, like Apple's designs are pretty conservatively changing over time. They tend to find a form and stick with it until they make another big move. And so maybe it stays in that for a while and you're fine with the laptop. But if you're looking for something that expands into other territories, again, when does that next iPad Pro arrive? What is that? Is it going to creep closer to this? That gives me pause. And also, yeah, I mean, you talk about performance on current MacBook Airs, like, can it run multiple tabs of Chrome at the same time without sounding like it's going to explode? Because that would be great. That's a test. If it can pass that test, I find like that's what's driven me crazy about MacBooks, is that there's stuff that's clearly like, I'm going, what is going on here? Why is the engine on? And if these new MacBooks can solve that and run smoothly like I've gotten used to on iPads, even if they're not multitasking quite as much, that's big. So I think that's up to, and also what the heck is Chrome on one of these? You know, what does Chrome feel like versus a Safari? Because we're going to be really browser based on these. If my life right now is all mostly browser based on MacBooks, and so I think that takes on a really big importance that again I can't quite get a feel for yet based on that presentation.
Yeah, I think there's still plenty of questions to be answered. I mean, you know, we've all kind of said them here. Do we upgrade to silicon? Do we wait for M2? Are we using a lot of old apps, so this isn't going to work for us? Or do I want something slick and new now? Is the Air going to answer all my questions, or do I want a Pro? What's the difference between the two? I mean, we haven't even benchmarked the new Pro against kind of some of the more advanced older Pros. There's so many different apples to oranges and different kind of comparison matrices going on here. But I mean, the good thing is we will be doing all those comparisons. We will be doing all of those tests. And I think the really great news is, even if you don't want to spend any money, Big Sur is coming out on Thursday. So you can play around and get a taste of the new without having to drop any cash, which is what I always like to see. So look, thank you guys so much for joining me today. It was a blast as ever to chat to you and feel like we're in the same living room ever so briefly. I want to thank everyone at home for watching on CNET Live. You've been a joy. It's always delightful to read your comments in the YouTube threads. And make sure, if you want to see more from us, to subscribe to CNET's YouTube channels, because we will have plenty of how-to content. We'll have plenty of reviews. We will be putting these Macs to the test, seeing what they're actually capable of. And if you want to read the full lowdown on everything that you missed today in the blur of information, you can check all of that out at cnet.com. Thank you everyone for joining us. That's it for us from CNET Live, and we will see you next time. Hopefully no more big events for the rest of the year. I need a break. See you guys.